Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiritually Sensitive Unleashed. This is a sanctuary for empaths and highly sensitive people. I'm your host, Emily Cady, and my mission is to help uplift people that are feeling overwhelmed by the weight of others' expectations. Each episode, we explore the mystical realms connecting with the universe, spirit guides, and angels to uncover your authentic truth and purpose. Join us for heartfelt conversations, expert insights, and practical tools to help you thrive as an empath. Today, I am honored and excited to have my friend Tia Renee with me. Tia Renee has been on a spiritual journey and awakening for over the last 20 years. Her life took a tragic turn when her husband was murdered. And as he passed away, she shared in his death experience. This profound event opened up doors to a world beyond the physical realm for her. She began to have out-of-body experiences and found solace in near-death experiences. These spiritually transformative experiences have continued to shape and guide her, providing her with the comfort and deep understanding of interconnectedness of all things. Tia, thank you again so much for joining us today. I'm so honored and privileged that you're willing to come on and share your story. This is a story I have never heard before, and I think it's just important for people to hear what you've been through and how you got through what you losing your husband and this trajectory that it took you on in the spiritual journey that you're currently on.
Emily, thank you so much for inviting me to be your guest. It's such an amazing honor for me. It's huge. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So, can you just share a little bit about your experience and what had happened?
Yeah, so in 2002, a year before my husband died, I had a dream that I was living in this dark city, and it wasn't like I couldn't see. I could see everything just fine, but it was dark, and I had this despair in my heart. It was so overwhelming and painful. Um, I had never felt anything like it before. And I think I was on a date with someone. I was sitting across the table in a restaurant having a meal, and I started to remember, or I was thinking, why do I feel this way? It's so awful. And then I started to remember. I was like, wasn't I married? And then wasn't I married to a guy named Terry? Where's Terry? And then I woke up and my husband's name was Terry.
Oh,
So fast forward a year, we're on the strip with my brother having a good time. There's a lot of stuff, happening. My parents were watching my boys, and we're just kind of hanging out. Um, I had gotten into a fight with my husband that morning, and I was ignoring him all day and being rude to him all day. And so when we got back, my parents wanted to leave to head back towards the house. We all lived in Las Vegas, and my parents and my sister, like all of our family, a bunch of our family. My brother lived in California. He was out visiting. So my parents were going to head towards the house, and we got a hotel room down on the strip to be close to my brother and spend some time with him. And we all went back up to the hotel room to grab my boys. I was going to stay there, hang out with them. And I felt bad for being so angry or rude to my husband all day. There was a lot of things going on in my life. I was really stressed. We just found out my dad has stomach cancer just a few days earlier. So I was taking my stress out on him. I told him, go ahead and go back out with my brother. Have a good time. Don't worry about, coming back whenever. Just go have a good time. I gave him a hug and a kiss, and I told him I was sorry. Thank God I did that. Please don't ever be rude or take your stress out on your loved ones, because you never know. Like, that was the last day that I got to spend with him. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like if I hadn't at least said I was sorry. Um, so he went out with my brother, and I went down to the hotel lobby or another level on the hotel somewhere to do the oxygen bar. and we had been out drinking. We had a few drinks, and I thought that would help with the next day. So my sister-in-law comes up a few minutes later, taps me on the shoulder and says, "You got to go right now. Um, Terry's been hurt." And I thought, "Oh, what do you mean he's been hurt? Like broke his hand or something?" Or I didn't think it was going to be anything serious. And so I was talking to my brother on her cell phone. I didn't have one. It was 2003. And she was like running and pushing me towards the door. And I was like, "What about the boys?" She said, "I've got the boys. I'll take care of them. You just go, 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 go." And I was asking my brother, "Is he okay?" And he said, "I don't know." And I didn't know what that meant. That wasn't registering. Like, how do you not know if he's okay? You're like, you were there with him, like, he's okay. You have to know he's okay. But that's all I remember talking to him about at this point, was like asking him. I think that's where my brain just froze up. Like, doesn't make sense that you don't know that he's okay. So I meet my brother at the casino across the street, and we go outside to this paved area. There's a curb. I'm sitting on the curb. There's an ambulance off in the distance. It's a paved area, but it's not a parking lot. I don't know exactly what it was, but there's no other cars there. And there's this ambulance over there, and I was sitting on the curb for what felt like an eternity. And my brother wasn't really telling me much, just that he hit his head on something.
So you couldn't see him at this time.
I couldn't see him, no. And so they wheeled him in a stretcher out. I could see him now after we sat there forever. And I jumped up and I screamed his name. And I was thinking, he would always give me a thumbs up, if I saw him across, a room, in a crowded room or whatever, he'd always give me a smile and a thumbs up or something. He was just really sweet. And I thought he was going to turn his head and give me a thumbs up, or just at least turn his head, somehow acknowledge me, and he didn't. And so then I started to realize the gravity of the situation. Like, I could understand better why my brother couldn't tell me that he was okay. It just wasn't registering before this point, and it still wasn't. So we go to the hospital. I'm calling everybody. They wouldn't let me on the ambulance because I was too panicky. My brother rode in the ambulance, and I took a cab, and we went there. And on the way in the cab, I was calling everyone, my family, my parents, his parents, his brothers, everybody. Everybody showed up at the hospital within, an hour or so. And we're all just sitting in the waiting room for a long time. And then they shuffle us into this little room, and tell us that he has severe brain damage and they might have to do surgery. So that really just wiped me out. I was devastated at that point. And they let me see him, and I wouldn't have even recognized him. His face was all beat up. It was purple and super swollen. I wouldn't have even recognized him. And so what happened to him, I often forget to tell what happened to him because I just continue with the story. I'm not even sure exactly what happened, but he was attacked by a homeless man as he was getting off the escalator. And this homeless man beat him, and he hit his head on something. And a lot of people ask if they found the homeless man. They did. That we had an awesome detective who found the homeless man within days before my husband even died. He was on life support for 5 days, and they found him while he was still in the hospital. So the detective that we had on the case was absolutely amazing. He wasted no time in going out there and finding him. So he was in the trauma unit at the hospital for 5 days. On the third day, I decided I needed some rest because I was staying at the hospital with him, and it was overwhelming and stressful, and I couldn't get any sleep. There was only a chair, and there was no lights out. There was a big glass window, people in and out. It was a teaching hospital, university hospital, so people were in and out constantly, nurses, doctors, students. And I wasn't getting any rest, and I was overwhelmed and stressed. So on the third day, I didn't leave his side. On the third day, I went to stay at my brother-in-law's house, his brother, to get a good night's sleep. And while I was there, I remember walking down the hallway and I felt dizzy and I had to hold the wall. It was really intense. I mean, that happened twice. And then it happened a third time, but I was sitting down on the couch this time. And we were watching TV. And this time the dizziness didn't go away. And I remember everything sounding like it was coming through a tube, like a PVC pipe or something like that, like a plasticky, echoey sound. The TV sound, and everybody who was talking, he had a few friends. He had a lot of friends, and they had all flown in from all over the country, mostly the Atlanta area where we're from, to spend some time with him. So there was some of his friends there at the house. Some of them were in the hospital, and a few family members, just people talking, and everything started sounding echoey. And then there was this little clear vision of light, or a little circle of clear vision on the TV. I didn't see a light. Okay, I don't want to mistake that. I did not see a light. Um, because some people see a light at the end of the tunnel. That's not what I saw. It was just a clear circle of vision, and everything around that circle kind of like smeared back, like Star Trek or something, when the ship takes off and the
And the
stars
light
kind of
is.
like streak back.
Hmm.
It was like that, but it was like the landscape of the room, just the room itself. But I didn't feel any movement. It only was visual. There was no feeling. Um, and so I was hearing like this echoey sound, and then my heart started to feel like it was gonna stop, and I think that sped it up. I was getting panicky, or it was like speeding up and stopping all at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. And I told my brother-in-law, I said, I think I'm dying. I thought I was dying. And so everybody thought I was having a panic attack, which that does sound like a panic attack. Um, but not the sounds being echoey. I never had a panic attack before then, but I had several after. But the difference was the sound, the vision, and then what I'm going to tell you next. I started to merge my consciousness, or I became him in the hospital bed. The My consciousness was like flickering back and forth infinitely fast. So it was almost like I was both places at once, is what it felt like, but there was still that flickering sensation. Um, I was him in the hospital, and I thought it was me. And I thought, oh my gosh, like it happened to me. I'm the one that's dying. Um, and I was getting extreme panic. I thought I had hallucinated that it happened to him, because like in some weird, I don't know, I wasn't a spiritual person, so I wasn't into like spiritual events or anything like that. I thought I just had hallucinated or dreamed that it happened to someone else, that it happened to him, when really it happened to me, and I was the one dying in the hospital room. And all his friends, like I said, he had so many friends and so many family that were in the hospital and surrounding me as well at my brother-in-law's house. But I could feel everyone's thoughts. I could feel their emotions for him dying, but it was for me, because I thought it was me in the bed that was dying. I could feel them in their heads saying, "Oh my gosh, poor Tia, she's so young, she's gonna die." And they were thoughts for me. And the reason I think they were thoughts for me is because I actually thought I was that person in the bed, but those thoughts were going out to him. And it was like I became him, if that makes sense. So it wasn't a word that I got attached to, it was the feeling of their thoughts. So they were thinking that for this person in the bed, which I thought was me. And then the next day when I went to the hospital, the whole energy of the room had changed. When I walked into the room to see him, it felt empty. And like I said, I wasn't a spiritual person. I was born and raised Christian, and I was a very, I guess, kind of like all American into, Disney World and McDonald's and, just basic cookie cutter, generic, all American person. I never thought any spiritual thoughts really in my life that I had any deep connection with. So I didn't really think about energy of the soul or feeling someone's energy in a room. That wasn't something that, I had any experience with or even thoughts of. And so when I walked into the room and it felt different, I really didn't know what to make of that. But it felt different. It felt like he was gone.
Was he still alive at this point or not?
He was still on life support.
He was on life support,
His
but his
body was
soul or
alive.
his spirit had, he had
But
transitioned.
so what happened is on that fourth day is when his body really started to fall apart. His lungs collapsed and his body started filling up with air because he was on a ventilator. And his face filled up with air and it was all puffy. And it was just like his body was already starting to decompose almost. While he was still on life support, his body was falling apart. And now looking back, I really do feel like his soul had left and
Mhm.
the machines were just keeping his body going. His feet were already turning blue before that happened, but now they were really starting to change color. And it was as if he was dead and he was the I can't explain it. It was just the way that the ventilator moved his chest up and down. It became very like robotic. It was like there was no life in there. Um, Whereas before it was more like a breathing, a forced breathing, but more of a breathing. And this was just like up and down, not like there was life. And so on the fifth day, they told me that I had to make a decision if I wanted to take him off life support or start some very invasive procedures on him. And all along, they were telling me he's not going to survive, and I just was trying to hold on to some hope that he would survive. They said if he did, he's not going to have a fulfilling life. He'll be in a wheelchair or, and I said, I don't care. I'll take care of him. I just wanted him to still be there. But then they said on the fifth day, when they said they had to do some very invasive procedures or take him off life support, I was encouraged to take him off life support. And so that is the decision that I made.
Tia, I'm just so sorry
Thank
that you
you.
experienced this. You and your boys. Um, and I just know, being a medium, that I have connected with many souls that have passed before their bodies.
Really?
And as you were talking, I got confirmation that he passed when you had that experience. That's what I just got filled with the, like, the spirit came over me really strong at that moment. Um, and I find it really interesting and fascinating about how we are all one. And your story really did show us that. Your
Yeah.
experience of, you were him, he was you, and that's why you were hearing, Tia, we feel bad for Tia. You guys were one. That
Yeah.
connection is just so profound. Wow.
And I didn't even know it was a shared death experience. I thought it was a panic attack for many years because I didn't really, even after I heard of out of body experiences and near death experiences, I didn't hear of a shared death experience. So
Yeah.
I just thought that was a really strange panic attack until recently when I learned of shared death experience. I was like, wait a minute, that's maybe what happened to me. And then I talked to some guy at IANS and he said, that he thought that's what that was. So, and I think so too.
I have never heard of a shared death experience until you. Can you share with me and your audience a little bit more and how you understood what a shared, I mean, after hearing your story, to me, it definitely sounds like it. Um, but I would love her to just to explore this a little bit more.
Well, I'm not an expert in shared death experiences. It's not as well known as out of body experiences or near death experiences. Like I said, I didn't even know that I had a shared death experience and just thought it was a panic attack for so many years. Until just recently, when I started discussing it, I started coming out and telling other people about it, and they said, that sounds a lot like a shared death experience. And I had heard of shared death experience, but I never really went into depth on researching it. But then I did, and it did seem to me that it was a shared death experience. So my understanding of a shared death experience is when you, and they're all different, just like, we all live different lives and we all have different, like different foods, and we're all individuals. Near death experiences are all different. This was different. Mine was different. And I think everyone's is different. And it's just kind of like a near death experience, but where you're not the one that's dying, but maybe it's a loved one, and you accompany them across the veil. Or I don't think I went all the way across the veil. I don't even think I went through the tunnel. I think I saw some sort of kind of tunnel, and I heard some kind of echoing nature of sound. It was like him and I joined up as one, and both of our realities merged together. Um, and I was with him at his moment of death, even though I was across town, a half hour away. Um, and I think that's what a shared death experience is, when you have someone that you actually share in their moment of death, whether you're bedside or across town or across the country. There's some sort of experience, something happens. A lot of times, maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes it's very similar to a near death experience, where you do see a tunnel of light and you're like walking with them through a field of flowers, or you see a light off in the distance, something like that. But they're all different. Um, so yeah, there's not that much known about them. They're not definitely not as widely talked about.
What a beautiful uh, way for your soul to help usher your husband over. That is absolutely gorgeous.
I think if anything, it was him watching over me, showing me, because he knew that it was going to be really hard. We had two boys
Mm,
and just bought a house. We had 3 car payments. I think it was more him saying, "You're going to be okay. Look, I still exist." Or
mm.
I don't know what it was, but I think it was more of, if anything, more on his side of initiation than mine. He was just always like that, always took care of me.
Mm. I see it in both. I absolutely see both. For you, him kind of scared because he had to leave you, and him wanting you to go with him and make sure you could see where he was headed, that you knew he was going to be in a better place than if he stayed. But you were like his guide along the way. That's how I see it. And I think it's really beautiful for both of you. You both obviously are soulmates and absolutely loved one another deeply.
We had a very special relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you still have any sort of connection with him in the spiritual realm? Does he visit you?
Um, every now and again in a dream,
Hmm.
but it's not as prevalent or frequent as it was before. About 5 or 6 years ago, my experience. It was like my last big cluster of experiences, but um, those were more like consciousness experiences. I still have continue to have dreams, um, but rarely nowadays. And my dad also passed 4 years after my husband, and I have dreams of him as well. That and I don't know if anyone's ever had like a visitation dream, but they're completely different than a normal dream. Um, you definitely know that it's a visitation versus just a going on a picnic at the beach dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how visitation dreams, like if I want to connect with somebody on the other side, I will actually invite them to join me in my dreams at night so I can connect and maybe have conversation that I didn't get to have while they were here.
I love that. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful way to connect. And I just invite them in. I just will call them forward right before I fall asleep and say, will you please visit me in my dream? I would love to see you.
And it works.
It works. You know, I if it doesn't work right away, I'll do it every night until I get to see whoever it is that I want to connect with. Even my dogs. I call them forward. They'll come forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a visitation dream by my dog once. It was really nice. It was beautiful. I woke up crying.
Do you remember what it was or
Yeah, so my little dog, she was a Bichon Frise. She passed away. She was old, and it was just really hard for us. She's the first dog I've had that's passed. Um, and so a couple of years after she died, maybe just a year, I don't remember exactly the time frame. I was I was dreaming about her, and I was holding her in a blanket, like wrapped up like a burrito, and holding her like a baby. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Macy, I thought you died. I thought you died." And she was so happy. She was licking me, and she was so happy, and it was so sweet.
I love
And it
that.
was definitely a visitation.
Oh yeah, she's telling you, I'm so happy to see you and I'm doing great. I love that.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
It it was amazing. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so beautiful. So I want to go back to you met a gentleman um, who kind of helped you understand more about the shared death experience. Can you share a little bit about this spiritual guru that you like just out of nowhere crossed paths with?
Dr. Moody.
Yes, can you share a little bit about him?
So after my husband's death, I immersed myself in information. I didn't know a lot about spirituality. I had never heard of out of body experiences, near death experiences. I never heard of any of those things. And so when those things started happening to me, I was very confused. And I actually sought out a spiritual church to help guide me. And they told me I was having out of body experiences. Well, this is like a paradigm shift for me. My whole world changed because I didn't know things like this could even happen.
Yeah, and
Um,
if I could just intervene, like, so you're raised Christian and spirituality is taboo, yeah, for you?
yes,
So
yes.
that must have been really challenging for you.
It wasn't so challenging for me because it was things that were happening to me, and I couldn't question that. I knew there was something more. What it was more challenging for was my parents.
Mm.
Um, and I would tell them things that were happening to me, and they wanted me to stop doing whatever I was doing. And they even had kind of like a little intervention with me with some of their church members, telling me how dangerous it was to have out of body experiences, that that it could make you go crazy and all these other things. And um I didn't that didn't resonate with me because it was a beautiful thing that was happening. It was wonderful. It was amazing, wonderful feelings. I really felt like my husband was trying to reach across the veil and say, "Hey, pick your head up. I'm here. I'm watching over you. I'm still here. You didn't lose me. Um, 100%, that's what was happening, and I could feel it. So I bought all these
Confirming,
books and
I'm telling you, he's confirming everything that you thought. He's confirming it all right now. He's like totally talking to me on this. I just,
oh my gosh.
yeah,
That's amazing. He does that. He does that on a regular basis. Not to me because I can't hear him like that. I'm not a medium. But whenever I talk to a medium, they are like, yeah, okay. He's
yeah,
always
his spirit is
there.
very strong. He's very present.
Yeah. And it's amazing after all these years, he's still here, that he hasn't left. Because it's been 20 years. It was 20 years in October.
He's in no hurry to go anywhere. He enjoys watching over you. Yeah.
I'm glad.
You and your boys. Your boys are older, but he still watches. He's very proud of you all. And
Thank
you've
you.
moved on. You're married.
What's that?
You're married.
I am not married, but
You
I
have a significant
I
other.
call him my husband. We've been together for 12 years.
Yeah, he's so happy for you. He's very happy for you.
I don't know why I'm getting upset. I don't usually get upset anymore.
Um, so I do a lot of uh, energetic healing for people who with trauma that's like totally embedded in their DNA. And so I'm sure my energy is just going in and pulling out stuff of you right now. Let me get that. I have a word for you. Let me get it. On June 3rd, all the planets are going to be perfectly aligned, they're saying. And I'm not into astrology, so I don't know details on this. I have to go into spirit to get more details. But this is what they're saying. All planets are going to be aligned, which means all your chakras are going to be activated on this day. And because of that, it's a spiritual upgrade that's going to be happening for everyone. But they're just pulling out anything that could, it won't hinder you, but they're making room for new is what they're saying. They're making room, like they're pulling out stuff to put in new to you. Does
Okay. All
that make
right,
sense?
cool. Well,
'Cause-
I don't have to work on June 3rd, so hopefully it's still a little ways away, so hopefully I'll just be able to stay home and immerse myself in that.
yeah, just allow yourself to be open.
And you think like that you've worked through things and then all of a sudden like you get upset again like I am. Because no matter what you know about the afterlife, yeah, I know he still exists. I know he's not burning in a pit of fire or anything like that. Um, I still miss him.
Right. No, and that's like one thing that people like me, I have access to the spiritual realm and I can connect with my loved ones, but I still miss them. They're not here.
You can't give him a hug or like go to the beach with them or go out to eat or grill or whatever,
Yeah, the
whatever it
things that
is.
you used to love to do with him, you just can't do it. He's
Yeah.
with you during those moments, but you don't always know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. All right, so I started reading every book that I could get my hands on because I wanted to know that he still existed as well as, I needed to know what was happening to me as well. But I wanted to know my main priority was that I wanted to know he still existed and that he wasn't being punished eternally because he was an atheist. And I was not an atheist, and I was trying to get us to go to church together. He didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really hard for Christians, for believers.
yeah. So it was like when he died, though, a lot of those hard, firm beliefs kind of fell away without even me thinking about it. It was no longer something that really just resonated with me. Without even having to read books or anything like that. It just my energy shifted. And I think that it was like him opening this portal and that shared death experience, kind of like a portal to the other side. It changed me, not just as an experience, but like energetically as well, because I had all kinds of out of body experiences. But one of the books that I picked up was this book called Life After Life by Dr. Moody. And I'm sure if anyone knows anything about near death experiences, they know about Dr. Moody. He coined the term in 1975. Um, and he was one of the first major researchers on the subject. And so I read his book and it gave me great hope because now here are people that are actually sharing experiences that live in my modern times. It's not the Bible written millions of years ago by who knows who and, you know, cryptic words and riddles and things like that. It was actual just stories of people who had died. And there was validating stories as well where they had validated something that happened while they were dead, came back and shared that with someone. And they're like, how could you know that? There's no way. So anyways, I found that fascinating. Never heard of near death experiences. And I saw his email. I think it was his email address in the back of the book. And I emailed him. I contacted him, however it was, and he emailed me back. And I was like, oh, wow. He invited me to his house. And he lived in Alabama at the time when I was living in Vegas. So I flew out to see my friend in Atlanta because that's where I was from. And I got a rental car and drove out to Alabama to spend the day with him um, in his home in Alabama. And it was just amazing. He is one of the most kind and thoughtful and patient people I've ever met. And he
Mhm.
just has this presence of peace around him. And I think I just cried the entire time I was there. Never once did he get tired of me. And he just was so sweet. And he had designed this thing called a Psychomanteum. He had done a lot of research about ancient wisdom, ancient seers, scryers, and they would use, you know, like a reflective surface to kind of see across the veil. Sometimes it was a crystal ball, sometimes it was like a black obsidian stone, like mirror, and sometimes it was a bowl of water. But he had built a psychomantium in his house that was a mirror, and it was angled in a direction where you couldn't see a reflection. So it was just like staring off into a reflectionless reflective surface.
Mhm.
Uh, and I didn't have an experience when I was at his house, but I came home and I made a makeshift one in my home. I couldn't sleep in my bedroom anymore. I lived in a really small house and I was 26 and my husband was 30. We had just bought our first house and it was really small because we wanted to be in the nice part of town and with the good schools. So we got the smallest house there was. It was really tiny. So I didn't have room to make this psychomantium anywhere but my unused bedroom. And so I made it there and I would sit there on a daily basis and practice looking into it, hoping to see my husband. And one day I did. And it was just a human figure that was like light gray, almost like smoky, but not wispy, not like wispy smoke, just,
It
you
was
know, that
formed.
kind of,
It was like a form.
yes.
Uh-huh.
In the, yes, exactly. And it came out of the mirror and just hovered over me, and I was laying down and it hovered over me and reached down and touched my arm, and I could feel it touch my arm, and it gave me goosebumps. And then I think when my emotions got too high, it ended the session or whatever you want to call it, the experience. And then he went back in. And that was the only time I ever had an experience in the psychomantium. But at that point, I didn't sit in the psychomantium very much anymore because I felt like I got out of it what I wanted to get out of it, what was meant for me, the whole purpose of sitting there and practicing. I already experienced it. So I didn't feel like I had to do it anymore. So that
That's
was really
incredible.
interesting.
He's such an advanced spirit to be able to actually manifest that, like the touching and the actually coming out and hovering over you. Like a lot of spirits in the spiritual realm, they can like communicate through moving objects or turning on and off electronics and stuff, or showing up in like nature with the bird or whatever. But for them to actually like come out and touch you, that's that's not, unless they're like earthbound spirits, that's a little easier, but he wasn't earthbound. So that's pretty amazing. And that shows how powerful he is in the spiritual realm guiding you.
His grandma used to tell him all the time, and this was the only person that she told this to, that his eyes told her that he was a very old soul.
Hmm.
And I was like, I didn't believe in that. I thought she was a little crazy.
Oh
But
yeah.
now I do. Now
He's
I,
confirming that right now. You both are. You both are. And you
yeah.
both have had many, many lives together. That's why he's here.
Yeah, I feel like somehow maybe we planned this
Oh,
for
you did.
whatever reason.
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
guys had a soul contract that you came in with to
We're
have
not doing it
experience.
again, though. I promise you that.
Mm-mm. No, 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 no. Lesson learned.
Yes, exactly. So another like cool things started happening to me after he died. I started having out of body experiences, and the first one that I had was I woke up, and it was the room was I was sleeping with my son, and the room was filled with this bright golden light. It was just beautiful. It wasn't bright. I don't want to say bright, but it was like the essence of golden light or something like that. And it was full of glitter, and glitter was floating all around. And outside the door, around the door to the closet and to the hallway, I saw this really bright gold light coming from behind the door. And I was laying, there's, the bed, and then I was laying on the side. This is my back laying on the side of the bed instead of on the
On the
top of the
actual
bed.
bed.
And I was like, oh, wow. And that was like that's why I consulted the spiritual church. That was what got me like my first out of body experience. And I had many, many more
So if I
afterwards.
heard you correct, your body, you're above your body, you're seeing your body. It's not laying on the bed, it's on the side, laying.
No, my body, I didn't see my body,
Okay.
but it felt like you would lay on the top of the bed with your back or your
Yeah,
side,
right.
whatever. But this time I was laying like this with this is my
Oh.
back to the side of the bed.
And like hovering over, like there was no gravity, right? You're just hovering over
Right.
the
I was just kind of like floating there.
ground. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I
And
love that.
I didn't even really think about, I just thought, oh, this is kind of weird, but it wasn't like if you would have thought about that happening, you would have been like, that is really psycho weird.
Right.
And it wasn't like that. It was just like, oh, this is kind of weird. But look how beautiful it is. It
Mhm.
just almost seemed kind of natural, almost.
So this is, not to interrupt, but this is one thing I love about like my experience when I went into my near death experience is feeling how expansive we are and how limitless we are. And to me, this experience is similar in that w- like being in this 3D on the earth realm, it's very limiting. It's very confining. We're so linear in how we think. But in the spiritual realm, there is no limitations. And you having that experience of like just kind of leaning up against or having your back against the side of the bed and hovering over the ground is like showing like in the spiritual realm, that's not weird. You
Yeah.
can do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I was in such deep grief, and I don't think that I would have ever healed had it not been for these experiences that he gave me. I mean, I'm sure I would have, and I'm not 100% healed, you know that. But I wouldn't be as advanced as I am living a normal life if it hadn't been for these experiences. It was so intense. And I feel like he gave me these experiences to help me with that grief.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, it's debilitating what you went through, and that trauma is like that just takes everything out of you.
yeah,
Knowing that he's been there just to help guide you through it is so beautiful.
yeah. It was. There was a lot of gifts that were buried deep, deep, deep into the experience, the whole package of whatever was surrounding his death was, he was showing me that so many times he showed me that he didn't die. I mean, almost on a daily basis when it first started, after he first died, almost on a daily basis, there was something happening. And then they kind of just, like I said, they've tapered off over time, but he knew how hard it was for me and he wanted to ease that. And so I just think it's so remarkable. And I know for a fact that he still exists. I know it. I don't have any, um, I don't even question it at all. I don't question that he's happy. I don't think that he's in hell. In fact, I don't know if I believe in what, the version of hell that I was taught as a child. I'm not sure that was 100% accurate anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of different thought processes, and just my experience. One, I feel like Earth is hell. I think that this density is very difficult. Um, but what my experience in working with people that have transitioned over, and he is in a very high realm, has got a very strong high vibration. I've done readings for people who believed in purgatory here. um, they believe in hell, they believe in things, and so when they transition, they maybe don't have the self-worth of believing that they don't have to go there, so they actually put themselves there. I've had done reading, and they don't have to be there, but they have to believe that they are worthy to move out of it. But
Yeah,
your husband, he's not in hell.
I've
He was.
heard a lot of near-death experiencers. I've had discussions with them, and a lot of them say that it's a making, we our own making. We're
It is.
not forgiving ourselves for something, or we have a lot of emotions that are built up that we haven't worked through, and that's now being presented as our landscape, around us, and it's all coming from within. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
It really is. It's 100% coming from within, and in doing this hard work and allowing yourself to be present and grieving. And thank God Terry was there to help guide you through this process, because that has really put you on a beautiful trajectory that you're now in a space to help heal other people that are in deep grief and help them understand what's going on. And I think that's just it's such a beautiful way for you to give back to people that are just, some people, grief is, debilitating. It just takes over everything. It sucks the life out of them, and it doesn't have to.
It really is. It's the hardest thing that a person can ever go through, I believe. And I don't
Mhm.
think grief has to be attached to death. It can be attached to divorce or,
Loss of a
other,
job.
exactly, major life changes.
Hmm.
A death is probably the most intense grief that you can experience, but there's all kinds, and it's hard to work through. And you're right, it can be debilitating. It can suck the life out of you, and you just feel paralyzed. And I did. I felt paralyzed. I felt like I couldn't live anymore, you know? Even though I had to, I felt like I couldn't live. I definitely couldn't live the way that I used to live, where I was happy. It just changed everything. I was not happy anymore I didn't feel happiness for many, many, many years. No joy, nothing. It was hell.
Hmm. Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, I know you've talked about your out of body experiences. Do you think that was the pivotal moment for you to start to get out of that deep grief, that crippling grief, or is it just time and allowing yourself to be present with the grief?
Yeah, it was time. Those experiences helped me. And in fact, they're part of who I am today, like what I'm doing with my life today. Those experiences changed my life path. But the grief itself, and I couldn't have been in the place that I am with my grief right now today if it hadn't been for those experiences. So they definitely played a part, but I started having them immediately, almost immediately after he died. And that I was in just such deep grief. It was like the dream that I had where there was that deep black heart despair that I had. It was like my heart was blackened.
Mm.
And that lasted for many years. But those experiences shifted my paradigm and opened my eyes, and it started my spiritual journey. And I'm grateful for those experiences. Even though I had grief still, I I learned so much about who we really are, what death really is. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but I definitely know more or have a better idea or have more peace and comfort within than I did prior to his death from the experiences. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was time, time really, they say time heals all. Well, I'm not 100% healed, and I don't think that you can ever become 100% healed when you go through such an event. But I've learned to live in a different way. I've learned to live in a joyous way. I now am very happy and joyous and blessed. I see blessings. And this is probably the biggest gift that he gave me is going through my spiritual journey. I now see blessings in all the little moments of my life. Just looking at the sky or a good meal or getting to spend time with someone I love. I really intensely feel those now and appreciate them like I didn't before.
Mm.
So it's my life has changed, not only in, knowing more about death and who we are, but in appreciating this experience. This experience, whereas before it was hell for me, now it's heaven.
I love that. Yeah. And that's, I'm so glad you said that because I said, earth is hell, but we can make it heaven here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that because it's true. I've gone through not a similar story, but a transition of my spiritual awakening, just being in the dark, dark night of the soul, and then coming out and seeing so much joy in everything.
And
And
everything. Yes.
everything could be a butterfly that flies over.
Right.
It just brings so much joy. Um, so thank you so much for sharing that. As we wrap up, is there anything else out of your experience that you want to share with the audience here today?
Out of my experience, maybe no. I've had so many experiences, um, and I have my proof that we continue. Um, but maybe just advice to, if anyone is going through grief or they're overwhelmed with any kind of situations in their life, just to keep going and it's going to be better. I would have never thought 20 years ago that I'd be in the place that I am today. I didn't want to continue. It was so hard. It was hard. It hurt to breathe, literally. I didn't want to exist anymore. And if there was nothing after death, good, because I didn't have to exist anymore. Now I'm the complete opposite. Like I said, this is heaven. You will get there. You'll cross, whatever divide that you have to cross, and it's going to be hard, but it'll be worth it. It will be so worth it. And if you've lost a loved one, you've not lost a loved one. They're never gone. They're always with you, and you will be reunited with them. I know I always say they're always with you, and you're like, but I can't see them and I can't hug them and I can't, go out hiking with them or whatever. But you will one day, you'll see them again, and you will, whatever is over there, they're going to be there waiting for you. As soon as you close your eyes for the last time, they're going to be right there.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you so much for that because it helps give people hope. Um, how can people get a hold of you? How do you give back to people after all that you've been through?
So just recently, I had a calling, and it was I never had a calling before, and I heard people say I had a calling, and I didn't know what that was. I thought that was just your job. If you liked your job, that was your calling. Well, this was different because I was sitting on my couch one day and I had this calling, and I couldn't focus on anything. I didn't want to eat anything. I literally just wanted to start a podcast talking about near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences to help others who were going through a similar situation as mine, or their own situation, or maybe people that are facing death, um, whatever it is, or just support for people that have had near death experiences, because those experiences gave me so much hope. Um, so I wanted to give back to that community in a little way. My little way is I started a podcast, and that was what my calling was about. I couldn't focus on anything until I took a first step towards creating my podcast. And I took that first step, and then finally my life went back to normal. But before that, it was like something was wrapped around my brain, buzzing. It was like, you can't focus on anything else. This is all you can think about until you do it. And so I did. And so I have a podcast. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Spotify. I just started on Spotify like I think yesterday or the day before, so
Ah,
it's brand new.
congratulations.
But all of my videos, and I have a lot of them, are on YouTube, and I release a video per day right now. And I've interviewed really amazing people such as Dr. Moody, and Miss Emily Katie is on there as well. She's absolutely amazing. Her story is phenomenal and very, very heartwarming and comforting.
Mm.
But yeah, that's my little way of giving back to the community that helped me so much. Uh, I just want to help others heal. I want to help others know that they're not alone, um, and that they're my little, I guess, tagline, I guess, my favorite saying in the whole world is, you're an eternal spiritual being. You're never gonna die. Not in the way that I was taught death was when I was a little kid, or when I was a teenager. Not in that way. Death doesn't exist like that. The body is going to cease to exist. And so often we think we're the body, but we're so much more, so much more.
Sure. Thank you, Tia Renee. Your podcast is amazing. Seriously, I highly encourage anyone to listen to it. Doesn't matter, even if you're not in grief, to listen to it. You get inspired by these near-death experience stories. Not only do you get inspired, they are actually awakening, spiritual awakening experiences for people that get to listen to them. Have a paradigm shift that changes the way you think. Just as Tia has experienced in real life, these stories do change. And many people have that I work with have had spiritual awakenings just from hearing these stories. So I highly encourage you. I will drop all the links into the podcast, or excuse me, the description below for your podcast. But do you want to share the what is it? What is it actually called so people can search it?
It's on YouTube. It's just called Tia Renee Podcast.
So thank you so much for being vulnerable and real, and thank you, Terry, for joining us today, um, and sharing your story. I appreciate you taking the time to share your story for my listeners and anybody outside of my community that comes across this recording. I really am grateful for you to help touch the lives of those that need it.
Well, thank you for all that you do, Emily, in this space to help others, creating this space for others to share their stories, and all the work you do to help people heal. As you're amazing.
Thank you. You are too. Please share your own spiritual experiences in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more videos on personal growth and spiritual development.